It seems that we now have the points values for all the new Sisters units, and a few interesting hints of some fun upgrades coming in the new Codex. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy-focused 40k channel, where today we're continuing in our look through the new chapter approved. And now we've reached the Sisters section, which just so happens to contain all the points cost for their new miniatures, and all the various points buffs and nerfs that the new Codex is going to bring. Obviously, points changes without knowing additional abilities or datasheet changes is only going to be so helpful, but it's certainly one piece in the puzzle. It shows how we're going to field some of these units, and I'm quite intrigued by some of the new weird squad upgrades that have appeared. They do seem to have added a fair few flavourful upgrades in the new decks. Let's jump straight into it though, going section by section, starting with the HQs and Troops and moving on to the other sections of the Codex. First up for the HQs, the Canoness does appear to have remained the same. She still costs 50 points, though a couple of her upgrades have gone up a bit. Null rods used to be free, now they're plus 10 points, and the Brazier of Fire now costs 5 points. To be honest, null rods were quite a good upgrade on her already, but again we can't know whether or not they've seen statline changes or buffs in the new decks. Celestine's up to 200 points from 170, I'd imagine that she's going to be getting even fightier. And Ephrael Stern actually makes an appearance in the Codex. Her and Kaiganel will cost you 120 points if you do want a couple of fighty characters to go and purge some chaos. Junitharitas up to 130 from 115, the Missionary is down to 40 from 45, and the Missionary appears to have gained the option of taking a power maul. I do wonder if this might have been to represent the model for the Missionary in Blackstone Fortress. Morven Val, the Supreme Commander for the Sisters, is added at 265 points. I think that's roughly where I would have imagined that she might have stood. Basically a slightly toned down Sisters version of Gilliman, handing out some powerful buffs, pretty strong in melee, and also fairly hard to kill with the protection that her armour gives her. It'll be interesting to see if she shakes out being worth it or not. The Palatine is 45 points, and you pay an additional 5 for the plasma pistol if you want to take that. And the Triumph of St. Catherine goes up to 210 points, which is a fairly hefty points bump as it used to cost 195. I wouldn't say that the Triumph of St. Catherine is a particularly bad model at the moment, but I wouldn't say it's outstanding. I would hope that by going up by a fair amount of points like that, it will see a little bit of a buff. It appears that its stat line isn't going to be changing from the datasheet, so maybe it'll actually hand out some slightly better buffs now. I felt like the ones that it had to start with were kind of a bit situational, and usually focused around close-range Sisters getting in combat. Even if that remains the case though, then the Triumph might have received some decent units to buff in those new Celestian Sacrosancts. That's it for the HQ section, and it means that one of my predictions was completely wrong. I thought the Dogmata was going to be an HQ choice. It does seem that she's an elite choice instead. Next up we come to the Battle Sister squad. They remain at 11 points per model, though they have got some very interesting changes to their war gear. First of all, they have the option for something called an Artificer Crafted Stormbolter. I'm going to guess that's to represent the quite nice one that comes with the kit, and it seems to be an upgrade that will cost you 5 points rather than the standard 3 for the Stormbolter, so I can only imagine that it's going to hit a little bit harder than it normally would. Maybe gaining a pip of damage or an extra point of AP could be a nice way to make sure that it's a bit harder hitting. It seems that in some ways Sisters' Flamer weapons are going to be getting a bit of a buff in the new Codex. All the standard Flamer weapons, things like Hand Flamers, Flamers, Heavy Flamers and Combi Flamers, all have a Ministorum word in front of them. So you're not just buying a Flamer, you're buying a Ministorum Flamer instead now. They still cost the exact same amount of points, but I can only assume that they're bothering to differentiate the names, because in some way they might be slightly improved, whether or not it might be ignoring cover, getting extra AP, maybe an additional shot, or some other minor damage buff. If they have chosen to buff Flamer weapons, then I think that would be quite a good move. Sisters are famed for their Melter, Bolters and Flamers, though out of the three I would say that the Flamer weapons tend to be the weakest picks at the moment, and they're kind of letting the side down. The Condemner Bolt Gun is going up in cost. It now costs 10 points, where previously it used to cost 5. Hopefully that will actually do something kind of worthwhile against Psykers now. At the moment all it gets is an extra D3 damage, and that's really not all that overwhelming on a Bolter profile. I'd hope that they might at least be able to target Psykers directly now, or otherwise get some sort of actual damage buff so they get some damage through on them. Finally, the Simulacrum Imperialis now is no longer free. It costs 5 points now, and who knows whether that'll have the exact same function or do something a bit different in the new decks. Next up we come to the Sororitas Elite section, a slot that's now looking incredibly crowded within the Sisters Codex. Now the Dogmata is an elite, we've gained no less than 4 extra elite choices. Istrid Thurger, those Sacrosanct, the Paragon Warsuits, and also the Dogmata herself. It's a good thing that battalions come with extra elite slots, and it might make Vanguard detachments just that bit more popular. Istrid Thurger and Agathe Dolan, the Relic Auto Tapestry banner, they are 90 points for the pair of them. Arco-Flagellants are down to 13 points from 15. I guess that can be only good news if they are keeping the same sort of abilities, but they now have an upgrade called Endurant Implants, which cost them 5 points per model. I'm not sure if that's going to be how they access their Feel No Pain save now. In any case, it's kind of fun that they're getting the flexibility, rather than just being stock as-is models. Celestians have gone up slightly, they're up to 13 points from 12, and the new Celestian Sacrosants are added at 14 points per model. I guess quite a lot will ride on exactly what that shield can do. If it does give them +1 to their save and maybe a 4 or 5 plus invul, then it'll make them really quite tanky for a Sisters of Battle unit. They can take Inferno, Plasma or Ministorum Handflamers for +5 points each, and there's an upgrade for their poleaxe type weapon called the Spear of the Faithful for +5 points. I'm not sure if that's something that they can all take, or whether they'll just be able to have that as a squad leader upgrade. Crusaders have seen a radical points drop, they're all the way down to 11 points from 16, and I think that's far more reflective of what they actually bring to the table. Even with the +1 strength power swords, they're not going to be all that much of a melee threat, but they should be at least fairly tanky with that 4+ invul storm shield. Death Cult Assassins have remained stable at 13 points, and then we get into the very wide array of minor sisters buffing characters, where we have the Dialogus, Hospitaller and a Magifier all costing 50 points, and then the Dogmata costing a little more at 65. Often with these small buffing characters in the new codexes, they really have reimagined exactly what sort of buffs they give, so I wouldn't like to speculate which will be strongest. We do know though that both the Dialogus and the Dogmata will be able to use those new Warhammer abilities, and with 6 different ones to choose from, I think it's kind of likely that they will have some strong options. I'd be kind of surprised if the Hospitaller doesn't follow in with the medic theme for the previous codexes, maybe giving a 6+ Feel No Pain to nearby Sisters of Battle, which could make her quite a lot of a better include. We've had that for the Plague Surgeon and the Apothecary already, so it makes sense that she might get that too. Next up we have the Sisters Mini Dreadknights, the Paragon Warsuits. These are actually slightly inflexible, you can only take them as a unit of 3, and they cost 240 points base. It seems that the choice between their top weapons is the same, as is the mace or the sword that they can carry. The only upgrade that they actually have to pay for is if they take multi-melters, which cost an extra 10 points over standard. I think it might be quite a big deal whether or not these girls get core. If they do, then it could be quite a good place to layer stacking buffs. They are looking like they're going to be a big meaty hard-hitting unit, both in melee and shooting. Next, the Preacher drops down to 25 points, down from 35. To me, that might imply that he might not be able to use the War Hymns ability, as if you can use that just the same as the Dogmata for far less, he might be the superior choice. He has picked up a little upgrade called the Zealot's Vindictor as well. I'm not sure what that is, maybe something represented on the model, but it'll cost you an extra 5 points if you take it. Finally, we have the Repentia. The Repentia Superior still remains 40 points, and the Standard Sisters Repentia are down to 14 points from 16. As Repentia are currently one of the strongest models in the Sisters decks, I can't help but think that that might imply a nerf is coming. Maybe they might be losing their innate rerolls to hit or something like that. I guess either way though, it doesn't really matter how good they are per model, it's how good they are for the points. Moving on to the fast attack and heavy support, Dominions remain the same at 12 points, Seraphim are down to 14 points each from 15, though their Ministorum Handflamers are now up to 5 points each compared with the 2 points that they originally cost. Zephyrim also see a very small buff, they're going down from 18 points to 17. Into the heavy support, and the new Castigator tank has been added in at 160 points. That'll buy you the triple heavy bolter and auto cannons, and then you have to pay an additional 10 points if you want to take the battle cannon. I think it'll be interesting to see how that stacks up against things like Space Marine Predators. It will be kind of funny and maybe a bit silly if the sisters just get a flatly better variant. Otherwise, the only upgrades that it can take are 5 points each for a Storm Bolter and Hunter Killer Missile. Fairly standard stuff there. Next up we have the Exorcist dropping in value, that goes down to 150 points from 165, and if you want to upgrade to the full fat Exorcist missile launcher, that's still an extra 30. I suspect it might be going down as it won't be able to gain access to core anymore, and also because its Exorcist missile launcher has gone down to AP-2 from AP-3, which we've already seen on a leaked datasheet. Mortifiers remain the same at 60 points. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't see quite the same amount of crazy attacks as they had before. Their anti-horde mode option was completely ludicrous. Penitent Engines are 55 points, up from 50. To be honest, it seems a little bit weird that they've gone up but the Mortifiers haven't. If anything, out of the two, the Mortifiers seem like the stronger pick to me. Finally, Retributors have dropped down to 12 points per model, a bit more in line with the standard Sisters picks, and I am a bit suspicious as to whether or not they might be losing the option to move and shoot with heavy weapons for no penalty. Retributors using strategic reserves or jumping out of transport does seem to be one of the staples of the Sisters list right now. I'm not really sure there's any real reason that they should ignore the heavy weapon penalty, so I'd certainly be a bit questionable as to whether or not that's going to stay. Armorium Cherubs are still alive and well, and still cost 5 points for that extra round of shooting. Finally, to round up, we have the dedicated transport, fortification, and these new Blessings of the Faithful. The Immolator's dropped a bit on its base points cost. It's down to 120 points if you take the twin heavy bolters. Now, Immolation Flamers will cost you 10 points though, and Multi-Melters will cost you 30, so it's gone up a little bit on the Multi-Melter loadouts. The Rhino's unchanged at 80 points, and the Battle Sanctum has received a bit of a points increase. It's up to 80 points from 55, though hopefully for this price tag it might be doing a little bit more for itself than just generating a miracle dice or two. Finally, we have these new Blessings of the Faithful, the new Sisters points paid for upgrade, the same as every Codex gets. Apparently these will be character upgrades. It's a two-part ability, one that's available all game long, and one that you have to activate with a miracle dice if you want to use it. So far we've only seen the preview for the most expensive one, the Word of the Emperor. That one gives a Fight Last ability to enemy units within 3 inches of this model, really quite handy to have, and could well be worth the 40 points alone. Though the Miraculous ability looks absolutely insane, I believe when you expend the miracle dice it might be that many inches away that the aura implies for. And this one means that enemy units within that range won't be able to receive invul saves when they're attacked by Order Core or character units. That could be truly devastating to anything tanking things on invul saves, things like Space Marines with Storm Shields, Death Guard Terminators, or big nasty characters come to mind. For me that seems like an absolutely crazily powerful combat buff. I guess the main issue is that Canonesses don't often want to be in full melee combat with the scariest enemy units, as she will be a little bit lacking defensively, and if they do live to strike back, she's got a good chance of dying. So anyway, that brings us to the end of our review of the new Sisters points changes. Plenty of food for thought there, and it'll be really good fun when we get a few more details of the new Sisters book. I will of course be making a full review for the Sisters of Battle Codex, so feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see that. I should be able to have it out within around about a week of today, if everything goes to plan. So if you'd like to see every choice in the Codex broken down rule by rule, then feel free to check back later. Finally, if you would like to help keep these videos coming, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics has a Patreon page, which you can find down in the video description below. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, such as seeing certain new videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry to the monthly prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help out, then the link is down in the video description below. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.